Next, we're going to talk about some of the navigation basics. So again, as I mentioned, we don't have time to go over everything, but we do want to make sure that people are able to figure out where they are in Domo and kind of the basics of how to get where they want to be going. So let's get started just with kind of that main menu. I'll start with the navigation header here at the top. So this is going to be the dark gray line here that you see. And the options that you're really going to spend most of your time clicking are either dashboards, which is where you should be sent when you first come in, or over here, it's grayed out because it hasn't been selected in the screenshot. Data is going to be the other main one. You're really not going to spend any of your time, for the most part, at least starting out for this particular initiative with any of the other options here. Whatever choice that you make here, whether it's dashboards or data, it is going to affect this left-hand navigation menu. So if you're in the dashboard menu, you'll see, we'll walk through the options that you'll see here this time. But if you're in the data side of the website, you're not going to get the dashboard menu. So you're going to see a lot of different options and icons here that are related to data. Going over here to the Help Center, if you click this, it's just going to immediately open a new tab, and it's going to show you a number of the resources that are available from Domo's sort of own learning platform. So some of those things that we'll link to at the end of this presentation, if you're looking for them and you cannot find them, you can always click the Help button and it'll take you to some of those locations, or at least links to some of those locations. And then this I'm calling out, it's not something that we use, but I have seen a lot of people who have gotten it stuck open when we're in office hours. This is Buzz Messages. This is Domo's own internal messaging platform. It is something that we really do not use and do not encourage folks to use. Please put everything in Slack if you have questions or want access to something that you can't figure out how to get access to. But we will do a quick demo where I'll show you how to close out Buzz if you're in that unenviable situation where it's open and you can't figure out how to close it. So to that end, we're going to do a little demo really quick. So here, I'm going to just show you that we are on dashboards. We see a dashboard menu here. If we go to data, you will see that these options are now different. Like I said, let's open Buzz. Not what we want. This will follow you around if you don't close it. So instead of clicking anywhere where you might expect an X to be, you're going to click the downwards arrow on the top left of the Buzz section. And then you're going to click Hide Buzz, and it will go away until you accidentally click it again. Great. So now that that little demo is over, we are going to actually move down to the dashboard navigation. So apologies if this is a little bit small. I just want to show you kind of like not what any of the specific writing here is, but really what the main sections are so you can get a sense of how to orient yourself. We're first going to walk through these sections of the dashboard specific menu on the left. Again, if you hover over the little 3 bars here, this should appear on its own. If you want it to be pinned, that will keep it over the left-hand side of your dashboard, but you might want to be able to just search and spend more time here on searching for something that you're looking for or seeing what's around. If you just want to browse, you can pin this here and it will not disappear. So the first thing here, there's a lot of stuff in Domo that you probably automatically have access to. So if you're searching for a particular term, or you just want to see if there's anything pre-built for your product or the product of a team that you're working with, you can type that in here, and any results that match that criteria are going to pop up to the bottom here in this list once you start typing. The next section here is personalized pages. So everyone's account automatically starts with these 3: overview, which is just kind of a collection of cards where things get automatically saved unless you specify otherwise; favorites, so any cards that you favorited would go here; and then shared, which is, what it sounds like. Next, below that, I think there's going to be a very faint pale line here, but the new section is just all the dashboards that you have access to. So if you've created a test dashboard, like I have many times, that will be available here. If it's something that's shared with everyone who's using Domo, then that will be here. These are not organized in any meaningful way, though you can certainly organize them yourself, and we'll talk through how to do that a little bit. But it is here. You go through to the Manage Dashboard section at the very bottom of the dashboard menu, and that is where we are going to be able to organize how this menu looks, and also how we're going to be able to create new dashboards when we get to that point. Next, over here, this is outside of the world of the menu. These are just some key features for all dashboards that I want to flag for folks. This top gray bar is the filter bar. This allows you to add fields that you want to filter for. You can also, this is a little covered up here, you can save those filters if you want those fields to automatically show for anyone else who's viewing the dashboard. So you can preset, we always want to have for the forms dashboard, form name should be the first option. Then we want to be able to have folks filter by browser and device category. So that is how that is configured. Interestingly enough, dates, filters, and groupings are on that same filter bar, but over here to the right. So sometimes it's easy for folks to lose sight of them. If you open this up, you're going to be able to both filter certain dates. So you can do between two dates. You can go to whatever the current, different options of units of time, current week, current month, current year. You can also see previous or the past X number of months or years. You're also going to have the option to group by different date parts here. So a lot of our dashboards that we built are preset to group by either week or by month. And this is not true for all of them, but some of them are also built to be able to have the user change how that grouping works, depending on how the data is structured. So we will walk through how to do that together. I think if we go back here, we can go to dashboards, and let's actually start with the search dashboard, since that I know is one that is easy to change grouping. So to get started, we'll just choose one product to search for. As you can see here, my search choices are reflected. I can tell that any card that's being affected by the search has loaded, because it's going to have this small blue icon here. And then for dates in particular, here I can change my date range. And let's say I want to do only this year. So I'll click that. And as we can see, now we're looking at everything from January 1st, 2022 onward. I can also change how things are grouped. Instead of week, which is the default, I'm going to go ahead and choose month. And because this is the only chart that has any sort of grouping, it was previously grouped by week. We can tell that there's a date aspect here in the x-axis. Now this is grouped by May. You can now see March. So that line smooths out a bit. These two did not change, and that is because these two charts do not have grouping elements. One thing I do want to point out is how date range and graph by do work together, or at least they should if you want to see data that doesn't show you trends that look worse or more drastic than they actually would be. So here's a great example. August, we are, at least now we're a little further, but at this point for where the data is loaded, we're about halfway through, which is why we're seeing a steep drop off here. So anytime you are changing the graph by to a different unit of time, you're probably going to want to use that in conjunction with these other units. So if I really wanted to stay with my current time frame, it would probably be less noisy for me to then filter by something that has an endpoint that is consistent with those date units. So here I'm making sure that that is the end of a month. I'm cutting off that partial month. And here we can see there's no longer, the most important thing about this graph is just the big decrease that we see for not a real meaningful decrease, just an incomplete month of data. Great. So coming back to our presentation, we're now going to move over to the data side of things. So for navigating the data section, this is just what we'd see if we had clicked the data icon in the main navigation header menu. It's going to default to just data sets, all the data sets in Domo. I'm just flagging that the data menu is over here. It's probably not something that you're going to use all that much, but this is going to take you to not just data sets, but specifically data flows, beast modes, that sort of thing, if you wanted to see those all on their own, not necessarily through a card. The things that are probably going to be most useful to folks are actually over here. So starting with this up top, we're going to return to this shortly. This is where your connectors live. When you want to get started bringing new data into Domo, this is usually where you're going to start. There is an option to manually upload files into Domo, and if you're really stuck, this is an option. Sometimes with, various data security issues, this might be something that folks have done in the past, but it is not a very reliable data pipeline. So we really try and have folks directly connect to things whenever possible. And then over here would be your transformations. So you have ETLs, SQLs, some of the other tools that Domo offers that we're not going to spend any time with today. But just know that this is where that information lives if it's something you want to dig into later. To find data that's already in Domo that might be useful to you, search is going to be your friend. So you can obviously search by key terms here in the search bar. You can also filter by certain tags. So some of those are actually called tags. We don't tag a lot of things, but all the data sets that power our standardized dashboards are tagged with a standardized label. You can also search by type. If I only want to see BigQuery connectors, or I only want to see Google Sheets connectors. I can search by who is the owner. If there's someone on a team who I know does a lot of work in Domo and may have data that could be useful to me, maybe I would search by then. And then these are also other terms that you can add to your search. You can also, for some of these, change how your results are sorted. So by number of cards, by last run, by created date, that sort of thing. Moving along, we're going to spend just a little bit of time looking at the menu for what would happen if you clicked on one of those data sets. So here we're looking at a newish homepage engagement events data set. But the basic locations of where information is organized here are going to be the same regardless of what data set you're looking at or what type of connector it was set up with. So up top, it's a little confusing just to talk about, which is, again, why I've called it out with big shapes instead. You have another horizontal menu just below the main navigation menu, and this is just specific to your data set. We'll spend more time with these different options later. But just know that clicking different things here is going to change what aspect of your data set you're looking at in the pane below. For this main overview page, you get a lot of basic stats here just in the very small text immediately below the dataset title. We get some specifications about how many columns, how many rows, when was it most recently run, who owns it, what's the connector that was used to set it up. And then over here, we kind of have what we're calling the impact. So this shows us how many cards does this power? How many people have access to this? Are there any data flows or alerts that are created related to this data set? And this would be something that you'd really want to spend some time looking at before you ever chose to, say, delete a data set or radically change the structure of the data that you were bringing in, just knowing that these would be the things that you would need to then go back and check weren't negatively affected. Within the data option of the data submenu here, I just want to specifically call out 3 other menus here on the right-hand side. So the first option you'll see just by clicking on data is the actual data table itself, which can be really useful to just scroll through, make sure it looks correct. If it's like full of nulls, that will be immediately clear and you can know that you can go back and fix it if that isn't what you wanted or expected. You can also click over to this little bulleted list. That's going to show you the schema, which allows you to create a data dictionary if that's something that's going to be useful to other folks who are building with the data, as well as some summary statistics just that Domo automatically creates based on its, robot analysis of the data. These take a long time to load. They're not always super meaningful because, again, they're pretty generic, but sometimes they can be at a glance useful. So I want you to know that they're there.